So I'll walk you guys real quickly through what I've got set up on my table here. I've got obviously my reference photo. I've got a Sharpie that I'm going to use to demonstrate how I decide the layout before I actually start working on my journal. I obviously have my journal. You guys don't have to use a Sharpie. You can use a pencil. You can use a pen. You don't have to even do this step if you want. But I thought that that's what I would start out using a Sharpie so you guys could really see what it is that I'm doing. I've also got some masking tape because I like to edge the borders of my page and make it nice and clean. I've got my glasses because, you know, I need those. And then I've just got some old cardstock that was in my cupboard that I'm going to use as a palette. And I'm also going to use it to practice marks before I put them down on my paper. So that is a good thing to have. And then I just have some newsprint, but you could really use anything that I might use to rip to do some of the different layers here. And then I've got my water jugs. I've got a variety of paintbrushes, and I've got my paint. So the colors that I'm going to be using today, I've got white and black, craft acrylic, just the cheapo stuff. And then I've got blue that I'm going to be using for the sky, obviously the white for the clouds. And then I've got this green, and I'll either use the green or the blue mixed with black to do the layers. And then I've got a variety of different colors for the flowers. So that's pretty much all you need for today. So, are we ready to jump in, guys?
Yeah, Adele, can I ask a question?
Of
course. I don't have my picture printed out. I just have it on my phone.
Oh, that's fine, Suzanne.
Okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm more using the printout so I can just show you guys my thought process and how I approach figuring out what the layers are going to be. Because we are going to work in thin layers today, kind of similar to what we did last month. So I'm going to encourage you to not get too much paint on your page because then you're going to have some challenges with dry time. So really work in light, thin layers, and you can always add more, but go more on the light side. Okay, so what I look for when I'm looking for a reference photo is an image that has a lot of different layers in it. So for me, I'm going to start, see this mountain. That's going to be one section. The sky, this is going to be the first section that I'm going to do. This mountain will probably be the second section that I'll do. And then we've got sort of this tree line hill here that might be number 3. And then we've got this area over here, which will probably be 4. And then we've got a little sliver right here. That's, I'm going to call that maybe 5, maybe 4. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I might go out of order. And then here's our horizon line right here. And it's about 1/3 down the page, which I find is a really nice composition. I'm going to do a little bit of editing in this section. I like this barn. So I think I'm going to keep that. And I might just make it simple like that. So simplifying. And I think I'm going to keep a couple of these trees. I might even add in some additional trees, maybe another one, because I like to work in odd numbers. But all this other stuff, I don't think I'm going to put that in the photo. I don't think I'm going to put that in my picture. I'm going to edit it out. Then when we get down to the flowers, I can see there's this layer of kind of green right there. There's a really thin layer of yellow. Then there's a layer of this reddish orange. Then we've got this big section of this bright sort of fuchsia tulips. And then way down here at the bottom, we've got a little bit of light pink tulips. So that's sort of the approach that I take when I'm looking at a landscape reference photo to figure out what the different parts and pieces are. And we'll use some masking tape or some just ripped paper as we go through to make the different layers, because I like a nice crisp line. And usually I work from back to front. So if you think about a landscape and you think about the stuff that's farther away, I paint that first and then I layer on top of that. Does that make sense for everybody so far?
It does.
Okay.
Now I have one question.
Yeah, Emmy.
You said the horizon line, and when I think of the horizon, I think of like sky, and I bet the horizon line you talked about was like more of an art horizon line. Can you explain that?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of different horizon lines here in this particular reference photo. So there's one here, right, the one I pointed out, which is kind of where we've got the flat stuff and like the barn that's on top of it. Then these are all different horizon lines up here, but I kind of like to think about the straight horizon line on the bottom as the main horizon line that's anchoring the rest of the picture together.
Kind of that rule of thirds.
Exactly. And this is beautiful composition because we've got about a third at the top, which is the sky. We've got the middle third, which is the mountains, and then we've got the bottom third, which is the flowers. So just absolutely beautiful composition here if you think about that rule of thirds. And the other thing I like about this is if you imagine grid lines going this way as well, we've got this area over here, which has a lot of interest, and then our focal point, which is probably going to be the barn because it's a little bit different than the rest of the stuff on the picture, is down here in this lower right hand corner. So really awesome composition in this particular photo. So Mom, thank you for sharing it. It's beautiful. All right, other questions before we jump in and start working our page?
Do you want us to do yours as well as ours?
No. So what I'm going to do is give you guys a couple of minutes to think about your picture and think about the different sections that you're going to work on your reference photo if you're using something different.
Right.
But I just kind of wanted to illustrate for you guys how I approach breaking up my reference photo into different segments, because I do tend to, here I'll show you on the one that I did before. Let's see if I can't find that in here. I think it's way back here. So if we look at this one, which I shared the video of, you see this is the sky segment. Then I've got different layers of mountains. Then I've got my horizon line with the field. And then I made some marks in here to kind of represent the grass that was growing in this particular picture. So you can use this technique, this process, and really apply it to any landscape photo that you have. And I tend to simplify the images and take out stuff that I think kind of detracts or makes it confusing to look at, if that makes sense. All right, great. And you guys jump in with questions anytime as we're going through this. I love the questions. All right, so let me get back to my page here, and I'm gonna start masking my edges. And you guys can start looking at your reference photos and deciding what you want your segments to be. And I'm going to put my reference photo over here for you.
not marked up copy and then a marked up copy? Does
Oh,
that
yeah.
look right?
Yeah, that looks great. That looks
Okay.
great. And Fanya, you could even simplify just a little bit more. You could make the sky all one area, right? So you could do your blue on the back, and then you could come on top of that with your white clouds all over the place.
Okay, got it.
I feel like I'm thinking of it as looking at as like the different color sections I'm gonna essentially be doing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
It does make sense, Paula. Yeah. And
I've lined up my colors.
awesome. I love it. Okay.
Is that how I should do it?
Yep, perfect. And the beautiful thing about these acrylics and why I like them more than watercolor for this technique is that if you decide you don't like how you did something, once these are dry, you can come right back on top of them with a new layer and it'll cover up all the stuff underneath it. So it's really, really forgiving. So if you're like, oh crap, I do not like the way that looks, not a problem. Just go back over it again. So I'm going to give you guys a tip. If you're going to use masking tape to mask off your paper, my tape is really sticky. I left it out in the sun and I think it amplified the stickiness. There's a chance it could rip your paper. So what I do is I take the tape. I don't know if you guys can, here, let's put, and I literally put it on my clothes and lift it up a couple of times to get the stickum off, because we don't want it too sticky. We want it sticky enough that it's not going to move around, but we don't want it to ruin our paper when we pull up our paper.
I'm using painter's tape.
Yep, same deal. Sometimes it'll rip your paper too.
Oh, okay.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to start right here. And normally I work in a square format for my landscape portraits, but I really, really like the composition of this one, so I'm going to keep it in the rectangular shape that it is. And the reason I like normally to work in square photos, it's totally personal preference. It reminds me of old Polaroids, and that's why I like that size and shape. But this one, I think I want to keep just the way that it is. So I'm just doing more tape de-sticking. Now I'm putting it on my table. It's getting some of the sticking. Oh, that worked pretty good. Okay, let's put this up at the top. And if anybody has to jet out early, no worries. I am recording this on my iPad, and hallelujah, I think I finally figured out the easiest way to get the videos edited and posted, which is post them to YouTube and then post a link for you guys in our community.
Oh, so it'll be lovely.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Facebook, but it would not allow me to upload the video from last month. I think it was just too darn big.
So you essentially are framing the page right now.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And again, this is personal preference also. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to. But I really find it satisfying when I'm done with my painting and I pull the frame off and it leaves those nice crisp edges. I just think it adds a level of finish to the page that you don't get when you don't frame it off. Sometimes if I forget this step, I'll come back over and frame it with white or black paint around the edges. So you can do this kind of in the opposite fashion as well if you want. All right, how's everybody doing on their masking tape frame and figuring out the different layers in their reference photo.
Good.
All right, any questions? Okay, so I'm gonna eyeball it as I work through this, and I'm gonna start to put down my very first layer, which is gonna be the sky. So let me grab a paintbrush, and as I said, I can come right over the top of the paint once it dries. So I tend to eyeball it and try and extend whatever color I'm working on down far enough so that it will be below the next layer. And that'll make a little bit more sense as I start to do this here. Okay, so I'm gonna just start with my blue straight out of the container. Give it a good shake. Put some over here. And also, you don't have to do the same colors that are in your picture. You have complete artistic freedom to edit, change colors, eliminate an entire part of the picture. That's part of the fun of this process for me, is playing around with different colors and layers in the landscape. So, have fun. Maybe use an unexpected color. And I'm planning on using pretty bright colors for this. Okay, so I'm just putting down a really, really light coat of blue. My brush is pretty dry and I'm not using a lot of paint on it. And I'm almost doing like a scrubbing motion.
Dell, is the key here not to use too much paint?
That's,
so that it dries?
that's right. Yep. We're going to work in really thin layers. And since I've got clouds mixed in my sky, I'm not going to stress about these little white bits that are showing through in the blue. I actually kind of think that adds to the character of the painting. But if you want to have all of your layers be really, really solid and opaque, that's, again, another artistic choice that you can decide to make. Okay, I'm going to put down a little bit of white.
Same brush or a different brush?
I probably will do most of the painting without washing my brush or dipping it in water at all. I might use a different brush for this part down here. I tend to not like to mix my cool colors, which are like your greens and your blues, with my warm colors, which are like your reds and your pinks and your oranges, because then you get brown, which is neutral. They kind of neutralize each other. So I'm looking at my reference photo and I'm noticing that up at the top of the page, it's mostly blue and the clouds are more kind of hanging out right behind the tops of the mountains. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I come in here. And I'm just going to pick up some white. And you guys, if you are frustrated by the mixing of the colors on your brush, feel free to use a different brush. That's just generally not how I roll. So.
Thank you. My OCD was going into overtime.
Yeah. Whatever makes you happy and comfortable is what you should do. So I'm just trying to approximate the clouds here. So I'm not trying to do an exact replica of the outline of the clouds. I'm just laying down white to represent where the clouds are. So that's another tip, is don't overcomplicate your colors. Just keep it light, because the beautiful thing about this style is that people will look at it and they'll know what it is, right? Their brain will know, oh, that's clouds, or, you know, that's a mountain. Even if you use really basic colors and composition to demonstrate that that's what, you know, you represent what it is. Okay, so I think I might want just a smidge more white, just to give it a little bit more. And I'm just kind of dabbing with my, almost like stamping with my brush. So, my mom, what are you laughing at?
Well, I do not have the dabbing gene.
And similar to what we talked about, I think it was in our first class, let the brush do the work for you. So, you know, use the brush and the shape of the brush to your advantage. So I'm just, you know, moving it around. And I'd say those kind of look like clouds. Maybe I'll do a little bit more side to side just to smear them up. But I'm pretty happy with how that looks right now. So how are you guys doing on your first section?
Oh, I went to the second section.
Oh, beautiful. That's awesome.
I don't think it turned out as well as I thought it would. Like, it didn't cover up the blue with the orange. So I'm like,
You might have to do a couple layers, Paula.
Oh, okay. Good.
So I'm going to show you how I do these layers. So I'm going to grab a piece of paper here. And when I do mountains, I just like to rip the page. And again, I'm not so concerned that my shape is exactly like what's here. I'm just trying to approximate that general shape. So I'm gonna look at my picture and do a little bit of hand ripping. So I know that it goes up and then it comes back down. And you know, that looks pretty good. Maybe I want to do a little bit more ripping right in there. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So see how simple that was, guys?
Yeah.
Right? To make, so now I'm going to make a mask, but you know what I did? I actually did it upside down. But that is okay. So I'm actually going to turn it this way so I can get more of a mask. Okay, so I want that about 1/3 of the way down. And now I'm looking at this and I notice, okay, this is a lot of white with some really dark kind of blue gray here in this section. And it goes a little bit more than halfway across. So I'm going to put this down. And also, don't be alarmed if you pick up some of your paint. Don't be alarmed. It's okay.
Thank you for that tip.
Yes, you will. You most likely will. And it's okay. I just work with it. Sometimes I leave it exactly like that. Sometimes I come over and kind of touch it up when I'm done. But yeah, don't worry too much about that. Okay, I think I want it just like that. Maybe up just a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a lot more white. And remember when we were working with the stencil and I said start on the stencil and like go towards the middle? Same concept here. I'm starting on top of my mask and going down because I don't want to get the paint. I don't want to shove the paint underneath my mask. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit more blue to my, oh, that was a lot more blue. And some black to make that dark blue color, which is the mountains. And again, I'm just gonna use my brush kind of like a stamp and put the color down approximately where it needs to go. Wipe some of that paint off so I don't have too much gloppy paint. There we go. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm saying, okay, between layers 2 and 4, right? That's where most of it is. So I'm going to leave the top part mostly white, and I'm going to concentrate it down there where the bottom of the other stuff is. And this is also where we're gonna get that push-pull. So like, for example, right here, I blocked some paint into the white. I don't want that there, but I'm not gonna stress about it because I'm gonna come over the top of that and put some white back on top of it. So if you get crazy with your paintbrush, again, this is super forgiving paint. We can just come over the top and put more color down. And I'm actually gonna grab a paper towel and just pick up some of that color to make my job a little bit easier. And now I am gonna switch to a new paintbrush because this paintbrush has too much dark in it, and when I go to pick up the white, it's just gonna turn into a lighter shade of gray. So I am gonna switch out my brush now. Okay, and I'm just gonna, again, come on top of this. And this time, my goal is to kind of integrate the white and the gray, the dark gray color that I put down. And it is a-okay if the gray shows through the white, because that is kind of how it looks to me when I look at this section on the picture. Okay, you guys ready for the reveal here? Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Ta-da! So we're just gonna keep doing that. That's basically it. See? Really pretty simple. So now what I'm gonna do is go to this section, the third section, and I'm going to first just see my leftover piece of paper here that I ripped before. How closely does that match what we got going on here? Because sometimes I just recycle, right? So I'm thinking I can probably get away with, if I just tear a little bit more off this side and a little bit higher over here. And I think that's gonna work for me. And I'm also looking at my picture, and there's gonna be a big old space over here that's gonna look really bad because it still has the remnants of layer 2 there, but I'm not gonna fill this in right now, okay? So I'm gonna put this right about here. And this one is, I think, even darker than the color that I had before, but I think just to differentiate this one, I'm gonna switch to green instead of blue. So I'm gonna put down some green here. I am gonna go back to my brush that I used before with the darker color. So again, these are just artistic choices that I'm making. Even though these are really similar colors here, I'm deciding that I want this one to be more green. It's trees, so green makes sense to me. So here we go. It's coming on top of this. And I think I am actually going to do this all the way across. And you guys will see, I barely have any paint on my brush right now. And that's gonna dry really fast. And ta-da! There's another layer.
Okay.
So you guys kind of see how we're starting to build up the different layers. And I'm keeping my mask that I've used because I probably will use these to touch stuff up in the end. So I'm just setting them off to the side. Okay. I think I'm going to let this stuff up here dry for a bit, and I'm going to start to work on more of the foreground here. So again, I'm going to switch to another paintbrush. I'm going to grab this one. And my first layer in this foreground is kind of like a light green color I think I want to go with. So I might use a combo of this color that's called Key Lime and this green mix here that I've already got going. So I'm just going to put a little bit of paint down. There we go.
All right, Adele, can you back up just a step?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing what now? The green with the yellow?
Yep. So what I'm doing is I'm going to give this stuff up here a chance to dry just a little bit more. And I'm going to start now on this horizon line right here, which is I'm choosing to do in kind of a greenish yellow color.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to use the straight edge on this piece that I used before. And I'm just going to put it down probably right about, I don't know, maybe right about there. Yeah, I like that pop of kind of bright green. And that is a nice, crisp sort of horizon line because again, I've used this piece of paper as a mask to get
What makes green? Yellow and blue make green?
Yellow and blue make green. That is correct.
Boy, these paints dry so quickly.
Don't they? They're great.
Getting away from me.
They dry really quickly, which is actually quite nice when you're working in a journal. And they also dry to a matte finish, which means it's not super shiny, so your pages don't stick together. That's why I love to use this kind of paint in my art journal. Okay, so I've got that first horizon line, and I tend to jump around just a little bit as I'm working, but you guys can follow me or not. So I'm going to do a little bit. I've got a tiny little brush now, and I'm just going to come back on some of these parts up here that the paper pulled out, and I'm just going to touch them up. And I might even go sort of close, just and do a little scrubbing again. Okay, and then I'm going to take the same little paintbrush and I'm going to dip it into that darker blue gray mixture that I have, and I'm just going to touch up these little areas that pulled the paint off. And see, it's just that easy to touch it up, which is awesome. Okay, how you guys doing? What questions do we have?
Nothing, but it's super fun.
Isn't it fun? I love this. If you guys do this on your own, another tip is just use a hair dryer to like dry the layers real quickly in between layers. A hair dryer is a super awesome tool to have when you're working in your art journal. I use mine all the time. I have a paint covered one that is pretty much exclusively used for my art journaling stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to come back in and figure out how I want to get at this little section right here for sections 4 and sections 5. So I'm kind of moving around, giving stuff a chance to dry, although this down here is like nice and dry, which is kind of cool. So now that I said that, actually, because this is so dry down here, I think I'm just going to keep on going with these layers. So we've got that greenish color, then we've got a real thin line of, I think in the actual picture, it was more yellow. So I'm going to go right here. And part of the beautiful thing about this composition is it's so simple. It's just like a line of green, a line of yellow, a line of red, a line of more of a magenta color. So it's pretty easy to put it together. So I'm gonna grab, I think I might mix in a little bit of orange with that greeny yellow color that I had. So let me just pull a little bit out here and let's see what happens when I mix those two together. Oh yeah, that's a nice, maybe a little bit more of the yellow. And then same deal, I'm just gonna come down. Use that mask. And there's my yellow, sort of, yellow orangey color. All right, now I'm gonna let that dry and I'm gonna go back up here. So I might kind of on the fly simplify this section and just make it one section. Because now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know, there's not a heck of a lot of differentiation between section 4 and section 5. In the picture, you can see that they are two different segments, but it doesn't add a ton of dimension to the overall painting. So I'm feeling pretty okay about just collapsing those two segments into one. So what I'm gonna do, again, I'm gonna rip another piece of paper and I'm gonna use another piece of paper here and fill in this section, which is now section 4 and 5 together. Does that make sense? All right.
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm way ahead of you. I collapsed a whole bunch.
I got frustrated.
All right, so I'm noticing that section 4 is just kind of a nice gradual downward slope. So when I tear my paper, oh, actually, I might even have this little guy over here that will do the trick. Look at that. That was just a scrap that I picked up from my table. And then let's see if I can use this one to kind of frame out the rest of the area. And I think I can. And I'm gonna make that, I think, just a little bit lighter color than what we used up on top. Just ever so slightly lighter. And I'm just grabbing a random paintbrush that already had stuff on it. And I might even go in with a little bit more blue in this section just so that it pops against the other two gray sections. So again, that's where I'm making some artistic choices to just do stuff just a little bit differently. And I'm gonna move my piece of paper here and complete that area. And a bit more. And let's pull this off of there. Okay, so now I've got a little area 4 and 5, which is cool. All right, so now I'm going to focus on this big strip of magenta. I'm deciding, because I kind of smooched the bottom part together, so I'm just going to do the magenta and then a little bit of pink at the bottom. And I'm actually going to grab a magenta just to make my life easier.
My horizon didn't quite come out straight, so now there's going to be a boat on the water.
That is awesome creative problem solving. I love it.
It could be also really stormy so that day.
So I think I'm going to go with this super, super hot pink. Woo. And I'm going to combine it with a little bit of regular pink, and I'm just going to do that right on my page. Oh, this pink doesn't want to come out of the bottle. There we go. These are such old paints.
I thought you were using a new technique on this.
Come on.
There we go. And I'm really happy with the combo of those two colors. I think it's a pretty close representation of what I was going for there. So I like that.
Yeah.
So you put it right on the bottom
Yep.
and you used your mask. Okay.
Yep.
Mask.
And I covered up a little bit more of the orangey yellow than I wanted to, but that's okay because I can come back in with my tiny little paintbrush and add more in there. Okay, so I'm feeling like I'm ready to move on to some of my final elements, which are like the trees and the barn. So I'm gonna use this
It's
little
like I'm
one.
using every color I have.
You're using every color?
Every color and every paintbrush.
I'm like, I got 20 colors. I'm like, oh, good, let's use that.
That's fun. Okay, so as I'm looking at this, I'm noticing that in section 3, we've got darker areas up here and a little bit lighter areas down here. So what I'm gonna do is come in with a mix, a really lighter gray color, and just sort of lighten up that area. And I'm not using a mask or anything, I'm just going in freehand. And I'm just gonna dab my paint in there. And I'm coming over my section a little bit because I'm kind of wanting this to look like it might be trees. So I'm using my smaller paintbrush to just dab the color on there. And now when I put that black roof of the barn, it's going to stand out against the lighter part of the trees down here.
You have to kind of wait for that paint to dry a little bit, right?
Little bit.
Okay.
Little bit. Okay, now I'm going to come in with the black. And this is really, I'm going to make this super simple. Like kind of a, what is that? A diamond shape for the roof. And then simple sides. So I'm not overthinking it too much. Get a little bit of paint, black on here. Now I'm going to grab some white and go in with white. And I hardly ever use an angled paintbrush, but I thought, why not? Why not break it out today? Okay, pretty happy with that. And I don't even even know that I'm going to do these trees. I think I kind of like it just simple like that. But what I do want to do is add a little bit of really light pink on top down here at the bottom. So I might grab that pink from before, just grab a little bit of white just to lighten it up. And I'm just gonna, again, kind of using the same technique. I'm just dabbing my brush on here. These don't look like tulips, but they don't have to. It's just color blocking that we're doing here. All right, I'm finally rinsing off one of my paintbrushes. And I want to make sure I get it nice and dry before I stick it back in the paint. Because now I'm going to start doing some touch up, because I kind of have just about everything I want going on here. So what I'm noticing is that I think I want to make this line right here just a little bit more crisp. So I'm going to come in with that dark, dark, dark gray and just clean it up. And I'm also noticing I want a little bit more contrast right here. So I'm coming in with the black, and I'm just gonna do some lines that kind of approximate trees. I'm gonna do that all the way across. And over here too. And you'll see if I touch down my paintbrush really lightly, like this is a great example right here, it makes a triangle that kind of looks like a tree. So that's what you're looking for as you're playing with your brushes, is like, how can you use your tools to do the work for you? Again, I hardly have any paint on my brush at all, but I kind of like that almost ghost marks that makes. It's a lot more forgiving to your eye when you look at the painting than if it's really, really dark and thick paint. So you can see now it kind of looks like there's trees growing along that ridge line.
My house is not working. I think I'm just going to paint over it. I am foreclosing on your house.
You're foreclosing. Yeah, I think I'm going to come over the top of mine with a little bit more white, because I was rushing it a little bit.
The thing I didn't consider is there should be some perspective. Like, it shouldn't be a giant house.
Oh, yes, perspective is important.
I like that.
All right. So I'm kind of feeling like this is pretty good. So the final thing I like to do, and if you're going to use a pen, wait until your paint is dry, because you will mess up a pen if you put it into your wet paint. That's a fast way to ruin a pen. So I'm using this pencil. This is a Stabilo All pencil. Paula, this is the one you were asking about.
Yeah.
These are one of my favorite tools. They will write on anything. So they're awesome to go in and kind of do a little bit of definition on top of wet paint. And I actually use them frequently in my large canvases. The one caveat to this is it is water soluble. So if you put wet paint down on top of this, it will, or water, it will start to activate and move the color around. So as with anything, you know, knowing the characteristics of your supplies helps you to use that to your advantage. So if you use it and if you're trying to make something that's not going to go anywhere, don't use this pencil. If you are working in wet paint, go for it and use this pencil. And if it smears later when I add stuff down, I just come back in and refine again. So what I like to do, and I'm holding my pencil way up here at the top, right? I'm not trying to do super detailed lines. I'm going to come along here, and I'm also kind of rolling my pencil, and I'm just going to define. And I sometimes like to come over a couple times. So that is mountain number 1. I'm going to come in and do the same thing here. For this section. I think I'm going to leave this one as it is. Also going to come in and just outline my barn just a little bit. Okay, and I think I want to put a red barn door on this, just for fun. So I'm going to grab my little square brush. And I'm going to dip it in my red. And I'm just going to do a little blop right there. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. And then I might come back and just give it a little bit of definition with the pencil. So I might, let's see, maybe I'll also do just a little line right here. Little line right here, and then again right here. So guys, I think mine's pretty much done. So I'm going to show you now. And again, I probably didn't take enough stickum off of there. Look at that. Woo! I love that part. Yeah, it just really makes the whole thing feel so much more finished.
You know what it reminds me of? You guys might not be old enough, but when I was little, there was this like peel and stick nail polish that you would get because you were a little kid.
Yes.
And it like peeling off the nail polish off your fingers.
Yep. Totally.
Yes.
Okay. So what time is it? It's
1:07.
108.
okay, 1:08. So we started at about, I don't know, 12:15. So in less than an hour, we've done a landscape portrait.
I love it.
So you've done the landscape. We all do.
Does it matter I mean, I guess we're just kind of open to interpretation. So, like, my mountains are like considerably larger than they are in the.
I think it looks awesome, Fanya.
Thank you.
But
Yeah, so really, how I approach this is I'm not trying to make a realistic reproduction of of my landscape. I'm trying to capture the colors and the feeling of the landscape. So if I edit stuff out, if my scale is off, I really don't worry about it too much. I just use the reference photo as a jumping off point. And actually, sometimes the end piece goes in a completely different direction than where I started. And that's okay as long as I like it. So we're really not trying to make like an exact, realistic photo representation of this. We're just trying to recreate the colors and the feeling that you get when you look at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
love it. Yeah, my mountains are kind of orange because I added poppies.
Oh, that's awesome.
Part of my picture.
nice.
I love it.
They were living in my head, so they had to come out.
That's awesome. And you guys, you can also kind of mix and match some of the techniques that we've done in earlier sessions. So like I considered for this section of the tulips, maybe I use bubble wrap instead of my paintbrush.
Oh.
Right? So, or maybe for the trees, I come in with some cardboard, right? So use your mark making tools to figure out interesting ways to represent the different areas of your painting. And, think like an artist, right? Like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. You're just trying to capture the spirit and the feeling. And I find that using fun and different textures really kind of makes it more interesting to look at. Another thing you could do in this technique is use collage papers. So if any of you guys saw my jelly plate video, sometimes what I do is I'll mix paint and collage. So I'll rip the collage to be, this mountain range right here. And then I'll paint on top of that. So you can really mix and match stuff and come up with some really interesting interpretations, let's call it, of landscapes.
Okay, you guys want to see what I did?
Yes. Here, I'm going to take my...
So this is from Santorini.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I did.
Oh wow.
Oh my gosh, I love it, Paula.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think
I love it.
the windmill is a little bigger than I would have wanted it because it takes up so much space and there's nothing in it. But I think I did the sun 3 times.
I love it. It is, the colors are just so vibrant and beautiful.
Well, this is where like I started off with the blue on the top, and then I did I was gonna do a layer of orange, but then the orange didn't cover that blue. So I kept putting more on it, and I'm like, okay, well, this kind of, when I did the red, I made sure they blended.
Yeah, that looks beautiful. So,
do you see the boat in there?
yes, I do.
Oh, now we see it. Where the line didn't quite work.
Yeah, you know what? That's, again, think like an artist, right? You guys can add or subtract anything you want from these pictures. And if you're not feeling good about your picture, I'm going to highly recommend you give yourself a break for a couple of reasons. One, for many of you, this may be the very first time you've ever attempted to do something like this, right? Yes. So it, just like, you don't just ride a bike on the first time you ride a bike. You don't just, start speaking a foreign language the minute you open up your mouth, right? You have to learn and practice these things. So if you are feeling like, God, this is a disaster, like give yourself some grace and congratulate yourself for trying something new, because that's how you learn. Oh, Mom, that looks beautiful.
Oh wow, it's weird.
I love
You
it.
have to, one of those you have to be from a distance.
I think it looks beautiful.
Well, let's see. I haven't got my house in there yet.
Yeah, so
The big trees.
okay. The other thing I will say is that we are always our own worst critic. So, just like sharing it with other people, I'm always surprised when I think something looks like crap. And other people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. So, you know, share your work. I have just been so happy, and it gives me so much joy when I see you guys sharing the stuff that you're working on and everybody jumping in and commenting on it. It's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. Anybody else want to share their piece?
I want to add this orange pill to mine. Is that weird?
No. I think that's, it reminds me of like a Van Gogh, like how he does the swirls.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ooh, and I like that. Did you put some collage in there too, Jen?
I did. I didn't like I wanted that.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, that looks great.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks.
Awesome. Emmy, how about you?
Well, okay, so so this was the picture that I took at Arches recently.
Yeah.
Last week. That's the picture. And then this was my landscape.
I think that is amazing.
Wow. Wow.
So I have fun, and I think the sectioning off piece, Adele, really helps me because I have a hard time with perspective and like how far to go up and down, and just putting a little square there helped me.
Awesome.
My rock is leaning a little. But who knows? Just don't show them the other picture.
Right. That's right. That's right. Oh my gosh, you guys, those are amazing. Those are so cool.
And then
It's really fun. Thank you so much, Adele.
Yeah, of course. This is so much fun for me, you guys. Emmy, were you going to say something else as well?
Oh, I'm just thinking maybe a little more pen work might be fun once it's dry.
Yep. You guys will be amazed when you go in and do, doodles or pen work, or like Jen did, where you decide, I don't really like this section, I'm going to collage over it. You can, all of a sudden, the finishing details make it really, really beautiful. It just puts the finishing touches on it. All right. Awesome. Anybody else want to share? All right. Suzanne.
I know. Here we are. Carrie. Oh, that's nice too.
Ooh, I like it.
That's pretty.
Oh, I'm not seeing it. I gotta see. Will you hold it up again, Suzanne? Ooh.
That's really good.
Good colors.
I love it, Terry.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, you guys. So next month, this is going to stretch me out of my comfort zone too, just so y'all know. So next month, our theme is sketching. Sketching a day in the life. I do not consider myself a drawer. So I have been doing some research, and we are going to use an approach that is called sketch noting. And it's going to be a little bit different format in May. I'm still going to do a session where we can all come together, but I'm going to encourage you guys to work in your journal for at least 5 minutes a day to practice sketching. And I will post for you some videos and some resources that I have been finding that I'm like, ooh, this works for me. And I'll also share with you some different artists and how they approach sketching, because there are so many styles of sketching. And again, it's first attempts, you guys, at least for me, I'm like, oh my God, that looks absolutely nothing like what I was trying to sketch. But give yourself a break. I'm even going to encourage you to use your non-dominant hand when you sketch.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
They'll probably look the same as the right hand.
For whatever reason, it frees up your brain to be able to look at the shapes instead of trying to draw what you think it looks like. Because our brain tricks us when we're drawing things, especially when we're trying to draw them from our imagination. So I'm going to highly encourage the use of reference photos. I'm going to highly encourage using your non-dominant hand to do your sketching. And we're going to do some fun things like contour drawings. We're going to do something that's called blind contour drawing, where you're not even looking at your paper when you're drawing. You're looking at whatever it is you're trying to draw, and your other hand is off drawing, and you're not even looking.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And
Well,
so
that's what those things are about when they're doing like this. You see a picture of an artist and he's doing this.
Right. So I'm going to be posting throughout the month of May videos, not done by me, but done by people who know a lot more than me about this, for you to watch. And I am going to be giving you guys a daily prompt, and I want you to spend 5 minutes minimum in your sketchbook. Okay? Yeah. And it's, again, this is going to challenge me as well, but that's how we grow, right? Doing stuff that's outside of our comfort zone.
Should we get a separate sketchbook or should we?
No, if you want, some artists use one art journal and they put everything in there. Some artists have one journal for sketching, one journal for painting, one journal for this, one journal for that. So it's really up to you, but I'm just going to work in my regular book that I've been using all along. Yeah, and I'm going to post some images for you guys that we're going to practice drawing, okay? There's this really cool site called the Noun Project. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it. And it was funny because as I was researching and watching some of these videos, these sketchbook videos, it kept coming up again and again. And for those of you guys from Gallo, Heather Hopkins actually had introduced me to this thing like 3 or 4 years ago. So I was already familiar with it. But basically, it's really simple icons, like line drawing icons of familiar stuff. And you can type in a word in the search and it brings up images. So we're going to together practice our drawing. And then what we're going to do in our session when we're all together is we're going to sketch a day in our life. We're going to pull it the practice all together, and we're going to draw, we're going to sketch out a day in the life. So, yep. It's going to be fun.
Cool.
All right. Awesome. Well, you guys, as always, thank you for joining me. This was so fun. I really look forward to these days. Does Sunday work for everybody next month?
I don't know. I have to look at the.
At your tennis schedule? Probably third Sunday of the month again.
Yeah, that's not
May 22nd? May 22nd, is that what you're saying?
That's the third Sunday. I don't know. I'm not looking at a
Oh,
calendar
no,
right now.
that's the 23rd. May 23rd is the 1, 2, 3, 4th. Okay, the 16th is the 3rd Sunday in May. Okay, that right?
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I will set it up for Sunday.
Yeah, put it on the calendar.
Awesome. So you guys post your pictures, inspire the people who weren't able to join us live today. I have recorded this on my iPad, and I will do a slight bit of editing, and then I'll post it to YouTube with a link in our group if you want to rewatch. All right.
Thank you, Adele.
Awesome, guys.